Coming up tonight on YCN News, general election results from Rockingham, Vermont show voters in this Windham County town support incumbent Democratic Governor Peter Shumlin. Races for county seats in West Central New Hampshire return most incumbents to office. And we'll take a look at the results of local elections in Claremont. For more news, weather, and sports, it's time for YCN, your local view.
Now, your daily digest of the Dartmouth-Lake Sunapee region, southern Vermont, and Windsor County. News, sports, weather, and all that is happening in our area. The news on YCN, your local view.
Good evening, and welcome to this Thursday edition of YCN News. I'm Rose Spillman. General election results from Rockingham, Vermont show voters in this Windham County town show incumbent Democratic Governor Peter Shumlin has their support by a greater than 2-to-1 margin. In all, 730 voters marked ballots for Shumlin compared to 339 for Republican challenger Scott Milne. Libertarian candidate Dan Feliciano earned 35 votes. Meanwhile, although Shumlin is the apparent winner in yesterday's governor's race, it will be the state legislature that makes the final decision in January. Lawmakers will decide between Shumlin and Milne, neither of whom received the required 50% plus one vote to be declared the winner. The race is close, Shumlin with 46.4% compared to Milne's 45.3%. On the other hand, Rockingham voters cast more ballots for progressive candidate Dean Corrin, running on the Democratic ticket for lieutenant governor. Corrin ran against incumbent Lieutenant Governor Phil Scott, a Republican. Total ballots for Corrin, 620, for Scott, 503. Westminster and Windsor, Vermont voters also favored Corrin over Scott. For Westminster, the count was 598 ballots for Corrin, 345 for Scott. Results in the lieutenant governor race were a bit closer in Windsor. 453 residents voted for Corrin compared to 422 for Scott. Even so, the margin of voters electing the Vermont lieutenant governor is greater than in the gubernatorial race. In the end, a bit over 62% ballots were marked for Scott compared to 36% for Corrin. Speaking of politics, YCN's John O'Connor spoke with New England College professor of political science Wayne Lesperance about Tuesday's general election results.
Joining me today is Professor Wayne Lesperance, professor of political science at New England College. And Wayne, thanks for being here. Listen, with a poll that NEC does, with your coverage of this, you're the guy to ask about what happened last night. What could be the highlights?
Well, I think there are three distinct stories about what happened last night. First, there was a national wave. It was a very red wave. Republicans did incredibly well. I think they outperformed expectations. When you're winning the governorship in places like Maryland and Illinois as a Republican, that's a big deal. So we know the Republicans took the Senate. We know that they did it with a pretty good margin, and there's still some races yet to be called that could increase that margin. They expanded their hold of the House of Representatives to a level we haven't seen since the end of World War II. So all in all, a really good night for Republicans. That wave crashed and broke on the granite of New Hampshire, though.
So that wave got washed back.
It got pushed back. 3 out of the 4 big races here in New Hampshire went Democrat. I think our poll indicated going into it that was likely to happen. There was still some speculation that if the wave were big enough, it could carry folks like Scott Brown over the top. That did not happen. Although I would say he ran a very competitive race. It was very close at the end of the day. I think the governor's race in New Hampshire was closer than most people expected. And of course, Frank Ginta in the 1st Congressional District won election again to the House of Representatives. So New Hampshire managed to push back on those 4 big races. But if you drill a little bit deeper on New Hampshire, in terms of the state House, the state Senate, and the Executive Council, Republicans had good days. So my sense of this is that when we talk about red and blue, you're painting with very broad strokes. But in New Hampshire, the results are a little more sophisticated than that. You have to sort of look at really local elections. And so we see a lot of local elections breaking the Republican way in terms of the state House, state Senate, Executive Council. But in those 4 big races, Democrats, Ray Buckley, the chair of the Democratic Party, had a really good night.
But he didn't have a good night in the House and the Senate.
Nationally, no.
No, here locally.
Oh no, sorry. Yes, in terms of New Hampshire State House.
So
yes.
So it's really it's interesting. He split the ticket. The people split their votes.
The sort of the two halves of the New Hampshire coin. Really, they did. There was a lot of ticket splitting, and if you look inside the data, look at the exit poll data, you see where that turns up quite a bit, folks. Folks locally, in terms of the people they know back at home, they seem to bend towards Republicans. In terms of those four either statewide or district-wide races, they went more Democratic.
Well, thanks, Wayne. That's been great.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Rose, back to you.
Thank you, John and Wayne. Dr. Lesperance is the director of the college's Center for Civic Engagement. Regardless of who wins or loses an election, life goes on, sometimes at ground level. Road work on Rockingham Street in downtown Bellows Falls continues. Businesses remain open along both sides of this major street. Some business owners are not happy that the work seems to be taking longer than expected, the Eagle Times reports. Yet the project is to complete placing new pipes under the street and resurfacing the thoroughfare. In response to the merchants, town manager Chip Stearns ensures residents and visitors that updates will be posted online. Detour signs are in place to advise drivers and pedestrians how to get to shops and appointments in the downtown. Go to rockbf.org and look under public notices for updates. Per the website, tomorrow from 7 a.m. until the job is completed, Rockingham Street will be closed. This will allow for crews to place a top layer of gravel along the road. On Friday, Rockingham Street will be closed from 7 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. for final grading. Parking lots will be open after 4:30 p.m., but all vehicles must be moved from these lots by midnight, the website notes. Turning again to political news, races for county seats in West Central New Hampshire returned most incumbents to office. Incumbent 1st District Sullivan County Commissioner Jeff Barrett defeated Republican challenger Don Clark by a close margin. Democrat Barrett topped the ticket with 7,237 votes, while Clark received 7,115 votes. 2nd District County Commissioner Ben Nelson ran unopposed. The popular Republican earned 10,284 votes. County Attorney Mark Hathaway also ran unopposed. In all, 13,974 ballots were marked for Hathaway. Sullivan County's new Register of Deeds is Chauny Baker. Baker, a longtime employee in that office, received 8,133 votes. Political newcomer Democrat James Reed challenged Baker and lost with 6,377 ballots marked in his favor. Reed also is a Claremont City Councilor. The race for Sullivan County Treasurer went to Republican incumbent Michael Sanderson. Democrat Patrick Adrian, a teacher in the Newport School District, ran against Sanderson. In the end, Sanderson received 7,442 votes over Adrian's 6,326. Diane Davis is now Register of Probate for Sullivan County. Republican Davis defeated Claremont firefighter and school board member Brian Rapp, a Democrat. The vote difference between the two is 8,643 for Davis, 5,721 for Rapp. When YCN News returns, we'll take a look at the results of local elections in Claremont.
The YCN News continues in a moment.
Welcome back to YCN News. I'm Rose Spillman. Local state representative races in Claremont will see the return to office of Democrat John Cloutier. Cloutier won the District 10 seat over Republican challenger Joe Osgood. Results from all three wards show Cloutier won the seat with 2,041 votes over Osgood's 1,662. City Police Officer Andrew O'Hearn, who also serves on the Claremont School Board, again won election to the House. O'Hearn defeated retired dentist Neil Ward in Ward 1, 566 votes to 429. And a squeaker of a race in Claremont's Ward 2, Democrat Larry Converse, a former state rep, will again be going to Concord. That's because he defeated Republican George Cacavero by 6 votes, 699 to 692. In the Ward 3 race, incumbent Democrat Ray Gagnon defeated Republican challenger Richard Madigan. Voters marked 709 ballots for Gagnon compared to 486 for Madigan.
The YCN News continues in a moment.
Welcome back to YCN News. I'm Rose Spillman. Now Matt McDonald will have a look at our weather for the next few days and then move on to sports.
Thanks, Rose. Tonight we have a 90% chance of showers with calm winds and lows in the 30s. Tomorrow will be cloudy with a 50% chance of rain before 1 p.m. Highs will be around 42 degrees and winds will reach up to 10 miles per hour. Tomorrow night, clouds should start to clear up. We'll have a low of 26 degrees and winds will range between 5 and 10 miles per hour. Saturday we'll have a high of 40 degrees with mostly sunny skies. Saturday night will be mostly cloudy with lows in the 30s. Now let's see what's coming up in our community calendar this weekend. Saturday in Vermont, the Brattleboro Winters Farmers Market will be held at 10 a.m. in the Robert H. Gibson River Garden. In Bellows Falls, the Wyndham Ballroom at the Popolo Restaurant will host the Vermont Comedy Divas at 8 p.m. Remember, you can submit local events from your community by sending them to news@ycnnow.com. On Wednesday night, the Sunapee Lakers took on Newt in the Division III volleyball semifinals. The Lakers fans were in a festive mood early in the match. Early on, Emily Safford sets Rachel Malanga, who tools this hit off of the Newt blocker for a point. Sunapee, the number 4 seed in the tourney, dropped to the first set to the number 1 seeded Newt Rams. Set 2 was tied at 24 apiece before Newt's Alicia Flanagan, the Division III Player of the Year, drills this ball down to give Newt the 26-24 win in Set 2. Coach Tom Rainey's squad was now 1 set away from ending their season, but a nice set by Katie Titus and a spike by Megan Frederick kept Sunapee in the match. But Newt's Alicia Flanagan was not to be denied, and it was soon match point to the delight of the Rams fans. On match point, Flanagan put the exclamation point on a terrific match as the undefeated Newt Rams advanced to Friday night's championship game versus Farmington. Congratulations to Sunapee for playing a great season and working hard to get this far. The Stevens girls traveled to Laconia to take on number 1 seed Bow Falcons. They had high hopes for a win after playing this undefeated Falcon squad in 1-goal loss just a couple weeks ago. Bow had other ideas. The first half was played mostly in their offensive zone, and the score stood at 2-0 at the break. It was 4-0 in the second half before Cardinals would break through with their only goal of the game. The final was 5-1. Congratulations to the Stevens girls for a great season.
Thanks, Matt. When YCN News continues, we'll join Capital Connections' John O'Connor.
The YCN News continues in a moment.